I'm Erin Ward. I'm from the Norfolk, Virginia, Hampton Roads area. Woo! I brought my family with me. So
Thanks, Mom.
yeah. I have a small but mighty team. We average about 150 units a year in the Hampton Roads area, which is the largest contingent of active duty military in the United States with 13 military bases. So our business is very, very military friendly and heavy. Our focus is also, we're very referral based as well. So we do about 60% of our business is referral based as well.
Erin, we're going to start with you. We know that things have been really strange and good and difficult and all the things for people over the last year. So share, what's the market been like for you in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, for 2023 was just, I don't know if anybody else had a really strange year, but it was a really weird year. And I think we were really prepped. Keller Williams obviously prepped us really well for some uncertainty in the market. And our market saw about a 27% decrease, but we were really blessed to, gain market share by staying year over year the same amount of units that we were doing in 2022 and the year before that. And I think a lot of that is attributed to how well we're plugging into the military community, because this is the community that's moving more than any other community in the United States. And so for us, being able to really be purposeful and plug into the community, we were able to continuously gain market share in a market that we saw a pretty big decrease.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? So when you say plug into the community, we know because we know you, that community doesn't just mean military, it means your backyard military community. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we're doing is we're putting a focus on making sure that we're educating, number one, right? So it all starts with education, and that's true whether we're working with military buyers or sellers or any buyers or sellers, right? So making sure we're coming from a place of strong education and we're bringing that throughout and making sure that people know that they can come to us whether they're going to use this or not, to really find out the best ways to buy and sell, the smarter options to do, making sure that they're the most educated buyers and sellers on the market, and really continuously pushing that within our community, because it's a strange place to live. If you've never been to Hampton Roads, Virginia before, it's pretty unique for sure.
Well, I was going to ask Erin, how are you staying, you talked about education, how are you staying on top of the educational piece to inform the community?
Yeah, I mean, so that's always plugging into events like this too, right? So I stay educated by connecting with, obviously KW military, organizations like VA Rep, making sure that I'm connecting with other agents across the country. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are the experiences you had? How did you get through that reconsideration of value process, right? Like, tell me more about it so I can bring that back out to my community. Assumptions, just really masterminding all the time so that I can bring that back to our clients and serve our clients better at the end of the day.
We love that.
I mean, we try to teach up front the clients that we're working with now how to refer to us, right? It's not a natural process that people are used to. So right in our first buyer strategy session, which we don't call it a buyer consult, it's a buyer strategy session, we start talking right then and there about referring to us. So obviously the military community, as big as it is a small community, right? So they're always going to know people that are PCSing to other places or coming to our area. And so this is a great way where we're able to even connect with people that never come to our area. And maybe somebody in Groton, Connecticut is heading to San Diego, California, and we're making those connections to those people we're not even working with, but we're constantly having the conversation about how do you refer to us, because I know they know people that are moving in and out, and now it even works. Forget even in the military community, we're doing this if you don't live near a military base. This is something you can do and start teaching people. Anytime somebody's moving to the area, anytime anybody's making any kind of move whatsoever, you're the one to call. But you've got to teach them to do that. That's how we get to them first.
Well, tell us a little bit more. How do you actually teach them to call you?
Yeah, well, part of it, so we use, I know there's a lot of you have probably heard of the promise, right? And so if you've ever been to Bold, you hear about the promise, and this is the promise that, we're going to go through this transaction together, I'm going to hold your hand, and at the end of the day, I'm going to ask you for a 5-star review. We've also added in there that we're going to make sure that you're constantly hearing from us, that we want to know, we've got to replace you at the end of the day. So Matt, when you and I close on this transaction together, I got to go find another awesome Matt, right? And you probably know another awesome Matt, wherever, and so I need that person back, and we have got to have those conversations, because it's not a natural thing to just think that, oh, I need to make sure I'm referring my real estate agent. You're starting to plug that information over and over again in their brain.
I want to hit on one other thing that you mentioned, and you don't call it a buyer consult, you call it a strategy session, and in the military that goes a long way. Why did you start calling it that? What's the difference?
Because I think a consult sounds too clinical, right? Like, I go to a consult with my doctor, right? Or sometimes, I have to consult with my attorney. I don't want to, it just didn't sound as fun. And when we talk about strategy, it goes back to that education piece, right? We're going to create a strategy together. This is a partnership. We're going to come up with a strategy together, and we're going to start with the end in mind, right? So we're going to work backwards. We're going to start with the end in mind and figure out where do we need to go and how do we need to get there. And it's a partnership together. And so as soon as we started switching it over to the buyer strategy session, we booked a lot more and they showed up more often.
Two key things: partnership and journey together.
We do a ton of agent-to-agent referrals, but we looked really closely. That's how I started my business, actually. My very first transaction came from an agent referral. That was kind of crazy to give, a brand new agent a referral, but that's how it worked out. But we wanted to be really purposeful too. As much as that's a huge part of our business, we also looked at the other, 30 and 30 percentages, and really focused in a lot on, once we started building that, and we're still extremely buyer heavy. But we knew that if we started with buyers and we stayed in relationship with them, we would get referrals out of them, and they would become, our past client sellers at some point. So we've done a really good job of being, 30% of our business now is past clients, repeat business. So one of the things we see a lot, and this can happen whether you live in a military town or not, is that education piece. Now we're talking a lot, there's a lot of equity sitting in houses right now that's not doing anything for anybody. So part of the education piece that we're talking about, and speaking about the wealth building, and now we have our past clients coming back to us to now buy investment properties, right? They're looking at other opportunities. They're moving up. When we first met in our buyer strategy sessions, we talked about, hey, can this rent, right, in today's market at least cover your mortgage, right? Now we've seen the appreciation on that. So they're moving up. We're talking about house hacking. So 30% of our business has become past clients, and not just past clients that are, PCSing or moving out of the area, but also focusing in on that education piece of past clients who are now leveraging wealth building opportunities through investment properties and things like that as well.
So can you role play that conversation with me? If I'm your client and you're educating me on how to refer you and all of these things, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if as an investor myself, one of the things I'm always going to look at, Dina, when you and I are working together, is we're going to look at what's the appreciation value in a normal market, which we haven't seen in forever, right? So we really got to dig in there, right? And so one thing, when you and I are out looking at houses, we're going to make sure that there's appreciation in a normal market for the property that you're buying. Because, obviously you're in the military, there's a good chance you may PCS. Where we live, it's easy to stay, right? But we want to make sure you're protected. But we also want to look at it from the aspect of, I kind of want you to buy and hold, right? I think there's a lot of great strategy and wealth building opportunity, especially leveraging your VA loan to buy and hold. So let's also look at, what does the rental market look like, and what is the appreciation in that neighborhood and that, geographic area that we're looking at? What does the rental appreciation look like? So how can we build your net worth, right, over time, and leverage your VA loan to do that? Then we make the call, right? Like right now is the best time to buy. Right? Like, get out there. Don't miss out on. We have the investor conversation.
Matt and I are fighting over this next question. Really quickly though, if someone is sitting in the audience and they're not comfortable talking about net worth and appreciation, was that what you were going to ask?
Keep going.
All right. What would you advise them to do first? Because we don't ever want to be giving people wrong financial advice. So if they're not feeling financially savvy enough in their seats right now, what would you tell them to do next?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? Like, as real estate agents, we have the most data at our hands. When we talk about, building value within real estate, learn how to read the data in your market, right? You have access to it. Data is king, right? And that's one of our buyer strategy things is, I'm never just going to tell somebody what they should offer on a property. I'm going to show them so that they can also create the value idea and learn how to make proper offers themselves, but you've got to learn how to read the data. You've got to learn how to dig in. And I know in your market centers and in your local areas that there are classes for you to be able to get in there and get real comfortable on property valuation and going back, you know, do a 5-year history, right? What does your market look like? Do you know your stats? You should know all that and get really comfortable with it. Once you get comfortable with it, everything else is easy.
Well, I want to sit here for a second because a lot of things when you talk about the buyer strategy session and educating them with all this value, some of that comes out to be a hard conversation around this is not your forever home. How do you deal with that type of conversation?
Yeah, again, it goes back to, so this is where you got to get into, it gets a little hokey sometimes, right? Because what's your long-term goals? What's your dreams? Like, tell me what you want long-term. Again, we're getting in relationship, hopefully for a lifetime with these folks, even if they move out of the area, right? But we want to talk about long-term, and most of our buyers are young. Like really young, like early 20s, right? And that's probably my favorite thing. I get more excited about that than anything else because I remember being stationed at Fort Hood, Texas in 1995, right? Where they said, do not buy a house until you retire. That was the advice we got, right? You don't use your VA loan until you retire, right? And so we never did, right? And so having those conversations of this is where I was at, this is where it put me so far behind from a relational standpoint. And let's be real, everybody wants the Pinterest house, but the Pinterest house isn't going to make you money, right? That Instagrammable house isn't going to make you money. So let's show you the strategy. And by the way, you guys all have this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Keller Williams Hold book, but if you haven't seen it, buy it. And there is a spreadsheet that is the most genius, mind-blowing spreadsheet that's available if you take the Hold class that will just open your eyes up and you can show it to your clients on how they can build wealth just utilizing a spreadsheet and putting in the numbers from your MLS. It's amazing.
And I guarantee you they sell that book in the red store. So how does your community involvement, how does having that as the way to enter the relationship change the game when it comes to conversion and bringing those relationships to fruition financially for you?
My background is working with, before real estate, I was the chief operating officer for a large veteran service organization. So I just continuously stay plugged into a lot of the different military nonprofit organizations that are doing really, really good work out there. Particularly, I serve on the DoD's Housing Roundtable as well. And that just helps me stay a little more in tune with what's going on. I mean, no longer an active duty military spouse, I'm not necessarily seeing everything on the ground or going through the things anymore that, our active duty families are, or even our families that are recently transitioning out. So that's a lot of, what we're doing. But we're also doing SkillBridge in I don't know if everybody's familiar with SkillBridge, but this is an opportunity where as active duty service members are transitioning out of the military, they have the opportunity up to 6 months to basically intern with a company. And so we've been hosting SkillBridgers for quite some time now, and that's helping us we're hosting them even virtually across the country. So a lot of our SkillBridgers aren't moving when they get out of the military to a military town necessarily, or even staying in our town. So, we've had SkillBridgers who've gone to Paducah, Kentucky, right? Which nowhere near, maybe an hour 15 outside of Clarksville, but they're nowhere near.
Nobody going there, Erin.
Yeah, I know. But, that way we're able to continuously support, the community, and we're helping out everywhere and anywhere.
Well, I was going to say, so you're consuming a lot of information to educate the community. How are you picking and choosing and being intentional around the information that you're consuming?
Yeah, well, spending a lot of time around a lot of veteran service organizations, I kind of figured out the ones that I wanted to focus on, right? So I put a lot of emphasis on military families, employment, things like that, and housing for obvious reasons. And so I put it, that's the kind of information that my community and the folks that I come in contact with the most seem to want, right? So a lot of employment resources for military spouses and veterans. If they don't have a job, I can't serve them in a lot of ways, right? So those kind of things are super important to us. But I also want to help with things like food insecurity. So we work very, very closely with a organization called the Military Family Advisory Network. that helps with food insecurity, and they've donated over 150,000 pounds of food in the last 3 years in military communities. But they also, it's amazing. They also put out a survey every 3 years. That's one of the best surveys I've ever seen in my entire life in how they pull the data. And that survey gives me a lot of information too that I can read about what's currently happening, not just with active duty families, but what's happening in retiree families, recently transitioned families as well. So I know where their pain points are, so that I can try and come up with solutions, right? Because when I can help with solutions, whether it's in my community or nationwide, then I'm just becoming, coming from a place of value at that point.
I want all of you to write something down though, just one question. And of course we can see you if you're not writing it down. All right, so write down the question, do I understand the pain points of my audience or my community? Because what she just said that you might not have thought is she knows the pain point so she can solve the problem. If you don't know their pain point, you can't solve their problem. You're solving a problem you think they have, and it almost never aligns. So write down, do I understand the pain points of this community?
Yeah, and one of the reasons why, because right now I think we all get those folks that, they're like, I'm just going to rent. I don't want to buy right now. I just want to rent. And if you dig deeper and you realize that they're also potentially going through food insecurity issues, which I don't go grocery shopping a lot because it's my least favorite thing, but my husband goes almost every day and tells me almost every day how much he hates spending $100 for I think a gallon of milk and
one
eggs.
Bag of groceries, maybe. Yeah.
Right. So whether you live in a military community or not, there's a very good chance that the people that are telling you they don't want to buy may be facing food insecurity issues. So if we don't know what the resources are, right, and if you can't dig deeper, then you can't convert them into buyers. Right?
Well, and I was going to say, in Fort Liberty, which formerly Fort Bragg, the county that's right attached to that, 17% of that county is food insecure. And those are our military service members and their families as well.
Well, it's all about asking questions. You can't connect unless you ask deeper questions. And when you ask the deeper questions, you can identify the problem and solve it.
Sticking with this theme of your life's walk right now, where you're not active duty, you're no longer an active duty military spouse, and you may be seeing more of the side of what happens after transition. If somebody out here wasn't in that bucket of people who are currently serving and they wanted to break into this niche market, what would you advise of them knowing everything that you know now?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. I would say you've got to find where they're at, right? And I think some of these areas, whether you live in a military area or not, you could host events and things like that bring people together, right? And they could be military specific for sure. And do a day of giving back, or recognize, a nonprofit that focuses on service dogs, right? So this is something we do where we just team up with a local brewery in our area, right? And we'll team up to bring in a nonprofit, usually military affiliated as well. And the brewery, we want to promote it. The nonprofit's promoting it as well. And I'm getting in front of a lot of military folks at the same time. We actually have a poker tournament coming up. That's the same kind of concept, right? But you can also tag in. I mean, we all have, everybody in the area has a Department of Labor in your town, right? You have a workforce development office, right? And so when veterans quite frequently move to different areas and they're not military affiliated, those workforce development folks usually can hear from them, and they often have VA spots. Go out and connect with those workforce development folks as well. You can make a ton of contacts and find a lot of military buyers in workforce development offices, as weird as it sounds. Just real quick, you just made me think, Jamie. There is an app. It's called Mill Map. And it has a list of all nonprofits and veteran service organizations that work within military communities, but I would highly suggest that. It's MilMap. It's actually created by the nonprofit Military Family Advisory Number.
I'm kind of going to piggyback off of Jamie. It's really put together resources. Like if you were moving to the area, and ask the people that you are working with, like what would be helpful to them? What can you be providing to them for when they get there?
Well, and the easiest way to know that, in my personal opinion, you just ask them, what do you wish you knew before you got here that you had to figure out on your own and it was entirely too difficult? Jamie, did you want to add something?
And just to add into that, so we've created It's nothing major. We haven't put a ton of effort into it, but it's a PCS guide for families coming to Colorado Springs. And in there we have job lists, we have the school lists, we have a lot of information about the community itself that's going to help those spouses understand really what they need to look for, or what interests they might have, what medical facilities we have, what hospitals there are. There's a lot of nurses and stuff that come in and out. And so just make sure that you're providing that information for those individuals and families that are coming in to help them with success right off the ground.
I mean, so we're looking at providing information that mitigates any potential problems or questions they might have.
Yeah, and again, it really gets you in front of those people before they're even coming to your area, right? So a lot of times these, when you're PCSing or ETSing, whatever it may be, you're really trying to figure out things 4 to 6 months before you're going out there. Sometimes 2 to 3 months too. And so be a sounding board, be a resource for these families that can say, hey, where do I take my kids to play? What parks are there? What jobs are there? What careers opportunities are there? What schools can I get involved in? Just be a resource, and you've got to dive in and learn all that stuff yourself so you can have these conversations with them and be successful.
I'm going to throw a curveball for just a second. I think you all need to hear this. So every one of you has mentioned getting to people before they arrive. Why is that the play versus waiting for them to raise their hand? Why is that more important? So Erin, with you.
Yeah, I mean, I like to get to them as early as possible because, again, it goes back to the education piece, right? So the more time I can have to talk them out of, to talk them into the appropriate buying, right? Like the educating them on what they should be looking for. But also, too, in my area, if you're moving from, Missouri, or let's say Fort Riley, Kansas, and you're heading to Virginia Beach, there's a lot of sticker shock as well. So the earlier I can start working on those kind of things and really having more and more conversations, and of course building that relationship, the better. I mean, really, truly, that's when we can really have them make super smart decisions on their buying, the buying and the selling process.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, setting expectations, certain areas like yours, I'm not really sure yours, but when you move to Colorado Springs and you think wherever you came from at $200,000 for a 5,000 square foot house was going to be the same as you were going to get in Colorado Springs, of course, I want to be able to educate them on before they come that $300,000 is about a 1,500 square foot house, and it's not going to be a mansion.
And it goes that way with whether they've bought before or not, right? Not just first-time home buyers, because I went through the buying process before and never had any education from my agent whatsoever, right? It's one of the reasons I wanted to get into real estate was to do better, right? And I know all of us out here, you've got a client that's coming in that maybe bought before. You're going to wow them when you go through the strategy session and actually sit down and educate them. They're never, ever, ever not going to want to use you in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I want to sit here for a second. I want to ask Erin. So like Dina said earlier, a lot of us out here don't live next to an installation. How do I do that if I'm not next to an installation? How do I provide all that?
Yeah, it doesn't change. You could take the military out of what I do all day long, right? That doesn't matter. We're using the data and the relationships. So, one, connect with relocation companies or HR departments at the big companies in your area. Go online, find out the movement travel patterns to your area, whether you live in a military town or not. All of this information and data is out there for you. Now connect, how are they coming and what are they coming to your area for? And then who are the people that are going to get you in front of them at that point? Being in a military community doesn't change, or not, doesn't change how you can do that.
So if you had one last thing to say, maybe something you wanted to mention that we didn't ask about, what would you leave with these people that they could take action on in the next 24 hours?
Yeah, I would get really, really good at the education aspect of what we do. Really good at it, because at that point, they're not going anywhere. You have a client for life. So when you can learn how to educate people, whether it's on wealth building or whatever you're comfortable on, making sure they're the most educated buyer on the market, you need to be that service provider, and you better know your data. So get really comfortable with it.
Yeah, it comes down to education. It's either we're validating what they already know, or we're educating them around what they don't know.
Hi, my name's Ashley. I'm from Hawaii. Erin, my question for you was, For your buyer strategy sessions, how long are those? How long are you spending on that?
My husband's probably gonna laugh right now because I frequently do these at like 8, 9 o'clock at night, and they're long, right? So they're probably a good hour to an hour and a half. Yeah. And I'll give it to you. I'll give you the recording of it if you ever want it. You can have it.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm the proud mother of a Marine sergeant.
Yeah.
I live in an area where we don't have any military installations. What is the best way on social media to connect with military? Because things like Facebook, they don't let you target your military.
Well, you should be buying lists, right? So do you have, what state are you in?
California.
Okay, so that's escrow state. Yeah, so can you get a list from like your title or your escrow company that says, you know, here are your VA buyers in the area? Yeah, send them letters.
Well,
Tell them you're a mom.
Well, I want to start the social media groups. I love what you said about having Facebook pages.
Yeah, send them a letter that you're starting a Facebook group. Put a QR code on it.
Yeah, great suggestion. And then one more question. How do you leverage your recruiting stations?
I mean, the only one thing I think you want at a recruiting station is the recruiters.
Yeah, it's tough. You can make relationships with the recruiters there. Bring donuts, bring coffee. I'm serious. Like, just spend some time hanging out around there. Start having conversations with those guys.
And leverage that mom aspect. That's a big deal. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Taylor Bagnick. I'm an active duty military spouse out of Virginia Beach. For me, I'm struggling around the operations of it all. Like, when you are capturing this information, what is one tool that you guys are using that you just can't live without for your 36 touch campaigns, capturing their information and then staying in communication with them?
Our we're systems heavy, so I've always been like a real systems snob. So I think of it this way, right? IFTT. If this, then that. So if they're coming in, then what happens next, right? And so it's a joke. In my office, if you come in, Taylor, come to my office and see it. If you come to my office, there are probably 13 whiteboards, right? And they're on wheels, and we will sit there and just plan out, you know, if Jamie sends me a referral, then what happens, right? So then I put the referral in the CRM. I put Jamie in the CRM. I immediately call and I text. I log all of that. I set a follow-up if I haven't done anything. And then I have a full action plan to keep Jamie updated, right? So really sit down and think about from where you got that lead to all the way to the closing table, and then years later, what does that process look like? And make sure you're using a tool like a strong CRM, like maybe Command or whatever, that has the ability to set all those action plans up.
And is that Command for you?
It is not. We're using another CRM, but yeah, I mean, I think any of them these days all offer that same capability, but I think the bigger thing is sitting down and saying, what does it look like? What's the path, really?
So you get a referral, you add them in, you send a gift card, whatever it is. Just have a system and process and how you're going to do it, and do it the same way every time so it becomes familiar.
And just start it and start working through it, step by step.
And we can do that. It's called design thinking. There's a great process around it that I got certified years ago in it, and I geek out about it. So if you ever want to do it, you just let me know. It's fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And so my question is, with relocation, what do you do to market your relocation packet or information?
We just post it all over Facebook groups. Like, we just blast it on Instagram, Facebook groups.
I'm going to add a tool in there too,
Yeah,
that's
love it.
like automation wise. It's called Mini Chat, MANY chat. And so this is the thing where you can, like, if you have a post and you've created a relocation guide and you want my guide, and I'm on Instagram and you type in guide in the comments, it automatically sends it, and I've got your information as well, and it goes into my CRM.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sharon Lopez Ramirez. I'm a retired Marine from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Well, my question was already asked by Eric, so thank you so much. So the only other question I would have is, Erin, I would love your buyer strategy guide.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Give it up for these guys. We're going to get out of here. They're going to be over here to answer questions for a few more minutes. And thank you all for coming.
All right, thank
See
you.
later.
Thank you, everybody.